Great, too.
All right, perfect. Lynn, we might start with you. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I know quite a few of you here, so it's good to see old faces. So I'm Lynn I'm GP at Transcendence VC. We are a Singaporean fund investing mainly in digital, and here in Africa, we're starting by a climate and digital fund.
And I'm Aurélien Duval-Delort. I'm CEO founder of Bizao. We are French fintech operating essentially in Africa, covering currently 8 countries. And what we do is a payment infrastructure to basically empower all kind of businesses to use mobile payment. So we're here in Dakar, also Abidjan, Douala, and we're also in Tunis. We are in a couple of countries, mainly Francophone, and we'll talk about this later, but it's an interesting story, Francophone versus Anglophone.
Well, let's actually get to those interesting stories. I think that, you know, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm back on the continent. I think that there's a lot of potential, there's huge potential, and having been in a lot of other continents, I can see that there's another type of magnitude of impact that startups can, you know, bring to the continent. We've heard it from Tidjane this morning that 2/3 of investments mostly are going towards fintech. So we could look at Africa as like a powerhouse for fintech startups right now, and a consolidation towards that. What's, you know, according to you on the ground, Aurélien, the state of affairs for fintech before we move into, you know, how we can look at this, the next chapter of it with the integration of Web 3.0?
Right. So I'm going to try to give my point of view on fintech in Africa. Of course, here from Dakar, usually you mostly hear another point of view from, I don't know, Lagos or Joburg, you know, or Nairobi, even Cairo. Those are the big 4. Here, the big 4 in Francophone Africa, it's more Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, you know, Mali, Cameroon. But those actually, and I think it was stated on the previous panel, are actually form all together a very big market. I think it's more than 200 million customers, which you know, all speak the same language and have mostly the same currency. And there's also a lot of common jurisdiction, single central bank for the Remu region. I mean, when I started my business, Bizao, in 2019, I saw that, you know, having one office in Abidjan made me able to accept payments across all the 8 countries of the Remu region. You can expect that to happen in another region of Africa. I mean, if you start your business in Rwanda, and you're not going to be able to accept payment from Nairobi instantly. It doesn't happen that way, you know. And when in Lagos, you're stuck to Nigeria, which is a great and big country. But so you have to take this into account. I mean, it's not a single market, but it's already, there's a lot of barriers that have been removed from a long time. And also there's the fact that the franc CFA is tied to the euro, which gives some confidence about you know, fluctuation over the currency. So when I started Bizao, I had these foundations, but what was lacking was, okay, is there a payment infrastructure on top of which I can create my fintech? So, and that's where you have a big difference between Anglophone countries, or I don't know, Europe or US or even China. It's here, banks have, let's say, 15% market share, and the credit card has a very low penetration. So as a fintech, you can't build your business on top of an existing infrastructure if you just look at the banks and cards. I mean, there's virtually no business to make. So what you have to do, I mean, I had to do this, is basically build the infrastructure first. Okay, so what you need on top of credit card, you need mobile money. And I think my very first project started in 2016. It was already a big thing, you know, mobile money. I don't know, maybe 400 million accounts in sub-Saharan Africa. Last year, now we reached 600 million accounts in sub-Saharan Africa. And in Francophone Africa, it's plus 40% year on year. So it's massive. So you need mobile money. Okay, what do you need for mobile money? You need telecom operators. And now you also need Wave, which is not a telco. That's really new. So basically, you need to build a payment infrastructure that is fairly new, interoperable. So you need all the payment options across all the 8 countries of WEMU region, plus Central Africa, plus, I mean, it's a huge work that we were lucky enough to build. But now that we have built that, other fintechs can join, and we have fintech customers on top of our platform. So I think now we have enabled the ecosystem to create more financial services on top of our platform. Right. So I hope we're going to see an exponential growth of neobanks, of lending companies. There's I don't know, hundreds of financial services to be built here, and the beauty is that it will work for 100% or let's say 80% of the population, thanks to mobile money inclusion. You have people in the villages that have mobile money, instead of other ecosystems where you rely on cards and you only target the people in the big cities. So I think now fintech in the Francophone region has the power to reach most of the population with new financial services. So yeah, it's a tremendous change, and I think we're going to see some big changes in 2022, 2023.
Right, and so you're talking about integration, consolidation. How is that going to help with the hype around Web 3.0 right now that we're knowing and understanding across the world? How do you think Africa can make its way and make a spot for itself and leave a dent?
So yeah, it's interesting because this Web3 is really based on good connectivity, because you need to be really performing a lot of daily tasks inside a parallel universe which is purely digital. Meaning you're not going to put like a few thousand francs CFA one day out of 2 to just have maybe 1 gigabyte for the week, which is what people do here. So I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to be massive here until the price of connectivity really goes down, and people can afford to be 24/7 online. So that's a basic. Now, prices are going down, and there's submarine cables and all that stuff, and satellites. I mean, everybody's trying to connect the next billion African to the internet. So if we take that connectivity thing aside, which is very capital intensive, what I see from my point of view as a fintech, but also as a video game sort of marketplace. I mean, people can subscribe to video games through Bizarro, and they pay monthly or weekly. So we see a massive uptake of video game consumption here in the region, and that is quite normal because there's a lot of young people. I mean, this room is probably very old compared to the average age of the population here. So everybody who is able to get a smartphone and pay some data, and who is between, I don't know, 15 to 30 years old, is going to play video games. So if you solve connectivity and price of smartphone, then you have a massive market, and Africa is currently 1.2 billion people, if I'm right, is going to jump to 2 billion in, I think, 2050, something like that. So that's massive. I think it's the biggest video game market that is still untouched. People start to realize that. I've seen that over the past 6 months, but it's still very small, to my opinion. And then if you bring a virgin video game ecosystem and mobile payment, which is a complete new infrastructure open to anything new like blockchain and crypto, you have the right basis for this Web3 story.
Potential. And do you see that for Bizarre?
I mean, for Bizarre, the thing is we're already into the video games payment, and we're already accepting various payment methods. So, you know,
okay.
We're in the middle of that, yes.
And you're
again,
observing.
The barrier is the price of data
Gotcha.
and smartphones. That is still preventing many people to access it. Not necessarily in Francophone Africa, it's the same across the whole continent.
Let's get to you, Lynn, maybe. What are your thoughts when you listen to what Aurélien just said on the integration of Web 3.0 in fintech? I understand that you have an art gallery, that's an art gallery on NFT that you're investing in. I understand that that's a different application, but like, what are your thoughts on that? And then we can transition into the different applications of Web 3.0 today in Africa.
So what Aurélien says is very interesting because I totally agree with him. And first of all, I need to say our focus investment is Francophone Africa. That's where we're starting. And second thing, we're specialists of digital. We digitalize everything you're doing in life, everything, believe me. And so we cannot do all that if we don't have payment. Because unfortunately, this is a common thing between ordering food and trying to find a car to rent and trying to find a house to rent for the weekend. This is the common factor between every single digital application that we're financing. Okay, so what he's doing is very important because this is a blood of the new era. That's how I see it. It's a blood of Web 2.0. That's where we're going to start, okay? So in our perspective, effectively, there was always this discussion about franc CFA here. I live here, by the way, full time. Feel free to grab me for coffee if you want to see me. There's a lot of talk here about exiting franc CFA and having own currency. Okay, I'm old. I'm 45. Okay. When I was younger, we didn't have that chance to say, okay, well, I'm just going to pick another crypto, and I'm going to spend my whatever thing I'm buying with a crypto. You have the chance to do that now. So I think act on it. I encourage entrepreneurs to just act on it. If you want to build a fintech, think of crypto options, and crypto doesn't have to be a crypto's. It could be a lookalike, which is fine. From the moment you have the funding to back it, this is okay. Totally agree with what he says. And talking about Web 3.0, I myself interpret crypto as outcry of Generation Z against the monetary system since Second World War. I'm sorry to be, might be controversial what it is. Because we put them into a world where, purchasing a roof on the top of their head, even for the deposit, we're talking about 148 years of saving just for the deposit in the US. Okay, so this is an outcry when we talk about DeFi. This is an outcry against the establishment. But for all, okay, that's how I see it. But furthermore, this generation has a lot more people. They have access to a lot more resources because, they can be trained online. And these diplomas are now today recognized. That's something I didn't have 20 years ago. You can train to be a coder online. You can actually put up an application in 5 minutes if you want for your little e-commerce We didn't have that 20 years ago. They have a lot more resources, but they also have a lot more competition. So when we talk about Web 3.0, for me, what is really important is to make it inclusive. When I talk about inclusive, I'm talking about we should all, technologists like ourselves, we should always be looking for angles where we can integrate emerging countries. And you mentioned about my participation in the NFT factory. We want that to be the first NFT museum in the world. It will be a physical premise in Paris. If you want to visit when we open it, feel free to reach out. I'll send you an invite for the opening. We're very excited about it. And our angle to enhancing the integration of emerging countries into Web 3.0, personally, is we are going to be talking to local graphic artists here. And we want to make them participate to the creation of NFT. And furthermore, for the best of them, because you need to code a bit, metaverse, okay? Metaverse are these landscapes that you create virtually, and for info, it's no longer a crazy story. Standard Chartered just invested into Sandbox last week. Okay, so we're talking about classic, big, major international bank, regulated, investing into the almost advanced type of Web 3.0. They bought land, actually, they bought land in Sandbox.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right?
Okay.
So we're not talking, you know, what we're doing here in our space of venture capital is no longer the Wild West and cowboys. You know, institutional investors are coming in and coming into the widest of the projects.
I love what you're saying about integration and like giving access, right? And inclusion. I mean, I recall a few startups in Nigeria, for example, Yellow Cab, doing a lot of exchange, for example. So currency exchange and then, you know, buying tokens on platforms in Nigeria. And then there's another example of Raise in Nairobi that's basically tokenized cap tables. So essentially creating an option for ICOs to startups in Africa. And now that you're talking about African artists being able to be featured in a virtual art gallery that's exposed to the world, and you know, in the Parisian capital, that has all these, you know, signals of inclusion and probably giving opportunity to tap into new capital, a new source of capital, and a new ball game.
So you see, how we structured the museum is, so one of our co-founders is the chief of staff of Ledger, Jean-Michel Perron, and the other one's the CEO of Sandbox. So we're definitely integrating gaming. Gaming is part of what we're doing. So we're collecting artists, but then to be later putting them into our metaverse is gaming, by the way. You know, and what we see as person is we see the imagination behind that. You know, we think imagination is very important for human to stay human and grow, you know, and that's what we believe in, right? But, you know, this is Web 3.0 is about creating life you want. Okay, virtual maybe, but it's social interaction. You can actually create your own avatar. You can draw it, you know, we will, actually there will be a residence for anyone who wants to improvise as artists. And you can just go and create your own little drawing avatar, whatever you want to do. You can even draw in your room if you want, you know. So we believe this is a way to integrate at least Africa. African artists are excessively creative. You know, maybe about the education framework that we have here. And this is advantage that you will keep. Because, you know, you don't change education overnight. You know, it takes 20 years to change, you know, people's mentality and education. So here's where I see Africa playing a role.
And it's interesting that you're talking about the move forward. This morning, I think there was one VC that talked about trust, right? And so how can blockchain, for example, as a system of ledger and like, you know, recognition and a network and proof, right, of work or proof of action can help in terms of transparency, you know, in terms of like trust, right, to increase that on the continent. I think that's also a great application that we can use from Web 3.0?
It's definitely, in terms of trust, it's definitely very important. Okay, well, we're going to start from where we left, which is the art world. You probably heard a lot about copies of artwork, yeah? Like things, you know, that's being sold millions, and oh, actually, no, it was a fake. Okay, so all these stories, and you have all these people who are experts on, you know, trafficking art and, you know, making sure it's the right one. Okay, so it's a question it's not the problem anymore because of NFT and blockchain. That's one thing. But second thing that's really important is once you have one concept, let's say I just draw something, right? I can make a wallpaper out of it. I can make like a house out of it. I can do whatever I want with it, right? So it's about helping artists to monetize what they've created. You know, and I think that's really important in terms of trust on a larger scale.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of trust in fintech, at least as far as we're concerned, you might have heard about all these NFT. I think it was like 13 billion being stolen in Q1 this year on NFT. Well, because we use Ledger, which is a code storage. Okay, it's a bit like when you transact with your credit card, the fact that you have a card which is authenticating yourself, you know, that ensures trust and security on very basic transaction base.
Okay, got it. And you wanted to add something to that already?
Yes, about African artists. So I think we see at Bizarre a lot of local video game producers starting their business and, you know, having a lot of local developers. So we see that in Cameroon, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Tunisia, in Senegal. It's really happening. Maybe still a little bit in the shadows, but by the way, I think it's a great spot to invest in. If I could, I would invest in right now. And those guys will need to have a way to monetize soon their business. But you also have music, you know, artists in Africa, very popular, some. But all the costs of distribution, you have to go through someone who will, you know, distribute yourself globally, and that is basically preventing 90% of the artists to be well known. It's the same for painting or sculpture, you know. So when you go digital, when you have a payment method that is trusted, and you have a certificate with NFT, then you have lowered all the barriers to expand your business worldwide, and that is, I think, a very good way to help African artists, you know, have their worldwide recognition.
I think that's a great way to end this conversation on a beautiful note. There's a lot of hope for inclusion and opportunity on crypto. We're going to open the floor for questions. Do we have a mic that will go around? Anyone has a question? Don't have any questions. Not a single one? Ah, okay, cool. We've got two, thank you.
All right, so Cecil, I see you. All right, so I'm Cecil from Ghana. I'm into education, edtech. So we've been experimenting with blockchain in terms of trying to reduce or improve trust in those who claim they are first-class students and those who claim, you know, I mean, they're really good at something, right? Now, the pushback has been that, you know, the education system is very old. Like, they've built systems in place to push back anything that's going to expose the gaps and, you know, the back and forth that some people are profiting from now. So in as much as these technologies are available, they've proven to work, it's becoming more and more difficult to implement them in the spaces where they are critical, especially in markets like education. And the challenge here has been if you do not take care, especially blockchain, right, the identity problem, they're going to end up putting back this old database that is problematic into this blockchain. So then we're going to have a continuation of that old first class that was bought through dubious means, that certificates that doesn't really exist, but that's what they're using, ending that back into the blockchain. Where do we work so we avoid that? Otherwise, then it's just a chain that's going to keep going on, if you get what I mean. So then blockchain loses its value. It's just another old database with a fraudulent document. So tell me how we're going to fix that. Thank you.
That's interesting. Break down the system and then build it up with blockchain. She's taking, Lynn, you're taking this one?
I think we will all have something to say about this. So just to come back to the history of blockchain, blockchain is basically, I would say, a online secured process, in communication. That's how I qualify it, because I don't think it's necessary in everything. I think it's quite necessary when you do contracts, smart contracts, even legal contracts. I would actually think it's quite useful. So where you're coming from in terms of education, I think it's interesting to track the education through the chain, how we amend the content. But to come back on how you want to, refrain the states from owning it, first of all, we can't really actually stop it. If they really want to do it, they do it. Singapore has tried to do it. China has tried to do it. There are a couple of other initiatives in the world of states trying to own it. To be honest, for the moment, it doesn't work out. Yeah, so that's where your luck lies. The politicians don't understand that, So I think you're fine.
Lydia, maybe you want to? He doesn't want to demo with that one. Was that enough?
It hasn't worked.
Exactly.
We count on you.
Hey, there's capital, there's the technology, so exactly. Jump in. We had a second one. Yes.
Hi, my name is Mohamed Dian. I'm the president of SendBlock. SendBlock is a local crypto community in Dakar. So I want to ask a question about the regulation in West Africa regarding cryptocurrencies. What is your take on that? Thank you.
Did you?
Hey, crypto regulation in West Africa. You're talking about WEMU region, or you're talking about West Africa in general? Oh, yeah, because, in Nigeria, there are some regulation about crypto, but here, to the best of my knowledge, it's neither forbidden nor authorized. That's the text, So you can build your own interpretation.
So gray area.
Yeah, I'm not the central bank. I cannot give you any guidance on that. But I think that the question is rising and rising, and that we, as an ecosystem, we clearly need some guidance, because there's probably an opportunity, but as well a lot of dangers. So it's always good to have a guidance. I think in Nigeria, the central bank has expressed one opinion, maybe changed it 2 weeks after, but it's still important to have this conversation and discuss, pros and cons, especially, in a region where you have more and more trade between different monetary zones. You have 2 francs CFA for now. It's quite complex to make money transfers between those regions. And then you have all the other countries with small local currencies. So, Africa as a continent has probably, some opportunities around that, but it's up to the regulators to leverage the technology that is currently reachable.
Wow. Yeah. So we've definitely expanded out of fintech, and that's the you know the excitement or like the magic about this hot topic. Well, thank you guys for your contribution. I don't know if there are more questions from the audience. So I guess we are done. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cedric.
Merci à vous.